Hi, we're still in between eclipses. Monday has already happened. Monday was mostly a sense of leading up to something. All that we have on Monday is Venus applying to a sextile with Mars and the moon applying to a conjunction with exalted Jupiter. Both these things happen after sunset on Monday. The moon Jupiter conjunction technically happens on Tuesday morning. But we're in between eclipses. It's a time of low energy. I know I'm very low energy right now. And this waning moon in between eclipses is like an extreme waning. It's not just the light is diminishing. It's an extreme version of that. I don't know why that second sentence, I don't know what that did to elucidate my point, saying it a second time. That doesn't mean that it makes your dark moon magic better, though. There's a weird example of magic during eclipse season that happened over the past week. Okay, so I don't like to talk about contentious matters, and something I noticed online, people on the internet, like internet people that I don't know, who I enjoy watching, who I respect very much. I don't mind when they're wrong, and they're wrong a lot. Sometimes I think I don't mind that they don't explain something fully, or that I think of a point that they didn't think of, and it doesn't mean that they didn't think of it. Anyway, I have this whole problem with appearing like I'm wrong, and but I'm going to talk about this anyway, because I know, nobody watches me, just like people who seem to be on the same earth. Girl, turn your phone off. Anyway, I think the people who watch me are on the same wavelength and not struggling with a totally different base reality. I always say don't do magic during eclipse season, and the other thing is that, like, if you want to really stay out of eclipse season, then you can consider eclipse season not just the 2-week time in between eclipses every 6 months, but the outer boundaries of what would be considered eclipse season and therefore contraindicating magic would be the sign ingresses, the sun's ingress into the sign that the eclipse is going to happen, and or whichever one is furthest out, the lunation before the eclipse. So that gives you like a much broader sense of eclipse season. Anyway, so someone's life was extinguished this week, and there was an article on a popular woman's website that talked about how, and this article was published either on the day of the eclipse or the day after. So I can't remember which right now. Anyway, the article was published on the eclipse. This article was about how they wanted to put a curse on this person who, 2 days later, was assassinated. And in this article, they talked about how they just wanted to be annoying, like do something, like make them have a pimple, or like have their thumbs swell up so that they couldn't tweet or something. And it was very petty, also pettily written. It was, when I read this article, I felt like, my sisters with the hard-hitting journalism. So I'm not going to my my more cynical the more cynical parts of my brain think like it's okay to publish this stuff. There's also the New York Times article again about a ficus, or however you pronounce it. These things are meant to like throw people off course who are maybe like mysticism curious. But I guess the judgment I'm levying against this article, amongst many judgments that I could levy, is just that it makes stuff like this look really bad. And you can make anything look really bad. Like the Wolf of Wall Street makes the financial world look really bad. But investment bankers are still very well respected. So, but my point is like, this is a great example of how, yeah, maybe it's completely unrelated, but it's like one thing that if they were, okay, so let's just pretend, I know that's not my audience. I don't get a lot of views, so a lot of people aren't going to come at me. And if they do, that's fine. I guess that's what I want, because like you can't get internet attention without people coming at you. I'm going to frame it this way to be just more confusing and maybe just be annoying. In the movie version of this, if we were writing a movie, I would write a movie. This is the perfect script for a movie that's like a cautionary tale about how not to do magic on eclipses. This action was apparently taken in the article where this person is seeking out Etsy witches to do stuff. It says that they took this action on the dark moon. I need to go double check this, but it looks like it was the dark moon in Virgo. So that would be, this year, that would be the beginning of eclipse season. So you're like, you're manipulating those energies in the sign ingress and the lunation before the first eclipse. And those two were kind of the same thing. This Virgo season, we had the dark moon was like right at the beginning of Virgo. So we had the sun ingress and then the dark moon immediately after. I think I made my point. I'm very low energy. It's a Mercury ruled eclipse, so I'm just like, I'm even more fish brain than I usually am. So, great example though. If I wanted to write an outrageous movie about this, then that's what I would do. You want to be annoying. Instead, something very drastic happens and it changes the course of the history of and the world. So Tuesday is a little more busy. The moon sextiles the sun, so this is a closing sextile. There's not much light left. The moon squares Mars in the afternoon/evening on Tuesday, so Tuesday is probably a little bit more annoying than Monday. More busy, more annoying. And Monday night, there's a lot of activity. The moon sextiles Mercury, so maybe there's some sort of talk that happens that pertains to this winding down and extreme waning, extreme like bottoming out of energy or draining of energy or something. Extreme expenditure could be one thing. The moon trines Saturn. So going back to the moon Mercury thing and some sort of like helpful talk between two parties, it could have something positive to do with boundaries or commitments or managing expectations. And then at night, the moon moves into Leo. Wednesday, we start this is a big week for Mercury. We have a Mercury ruled eclipse on Sunday. And Mercury makes a lot of aspects and does a sign ingress before that. And it mostly happens on Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday leads up to all this stuff, so you might see the aspects I'm going to talk about that happen on Thursday. You might also see them coming into fruition on Wednesday. Wednesday, the moon trines Neptune. That's actually more of a Tuesday night thing. So the moon in Leo trining Neptune in Aries. That sounds like fun. It sounds like a fun night, Tuesday night, actually. Or like dynamic. Maybe not necessarily fun, but like a bit much. And then the moon sextiles Uranus also. So like, again, going back to Tuesday night, possibly a little explosive for better or for worse. And especially because the moon opposes Pluto also. So Tuesday night, I guess my little marker's on Wednesday, but Tuesday seems like a lot and quite complicated, especially if you're up late. Wednesday's a little bit more simple. It starts with the moon, or with the Mercury-Saturn opposition. So we have Mercury at the end of Virgo. A solar eclipse in Virgo is about to complete. And the last, just for perspective, the Mercury-Saturn conjunction was on February 25th. And Mercury went retrograde in Pisces, but Mercury only conjoined Saturn one time. Okay, just had to mess with my hair. Can you tell the energy is just off? Like I feel like detached, despondent, and not very intellectually stimulated. So also, this would technically be Wednesday night / Thursday morning. Mercury moves into Libra. So there's a diplomacy theme now. There's something about like, if you can convince others, then you feel like it's the truth. So being careful about that. And there is kind of a speaking truth to power theme in early Libra. And I wonder about that given the things that have happened recently. And Mercury also opposes Neptune immediately. And this Mercury-Neptune configuration, even though it's separating, is present in the eclipse also. And we can see this in the world with everything I just said about Mercury in Libra and in early Libra, opposing like delusional war stuff, like what the F is your problem stuff. And that kind of thing is happening now because we have people, there's like a political division in the country, which I don't like ascribe to either. A part of it is like if you come out like in support of one detail, then all the other things are magnetized. And someone very close to me once told me that if you're not all the way left, you're far right. And that's what has been going on. But now we have like sort of a break in that, like that egg has cracked, and now we have people saying like, please stop. People who are the side opposite of the country's leadership saying to people who are also on the side opposite of the country's leadership, encouraging them not to align conceptually the country's leadership with like a notorious historical figure who was clearly very bad, because it's resulting in like delusional acts of aggression, which is Neptune in Aries. So no matter what the motive of this act of aggression was, whether it was just like an unhinged person, or if, sometimes it is a thing that like larger entities find it easy to find an unhinged person to carry out something that they want. I'm not saying that that is what happened. I'm saying that is amongst the possibilities, because that's something that happens in our world. I'm not saying that's what happened. Anyway, either way, it is a Neptune in Aries thing. It's like, is there a secret undercurrent going through this act of aggression that we don't even know about? This is about something else, and about like getting our attention on the act of aggression, so that things like the fact that all the major airlines sold 5 billion plane ticket records to the government for warrantless searching. That happened, I guess, recently. I don't know what date that happened, but it was a very recent headline. Like a headline today. It's a data broker for all the major airlines is selling access to 5 billion plane ticketing records to the government for warrantless searching and monitoring of people's movements. It's also, I'm not, anyway, I could go on about Neptune and Aries and like, what do acts of aggression mean? If Neptune is deception, then what's going on under the hood? Whether it's like intentional deception, or whether it's an unhinged person who has beef with something and is taking it out in an insane way and they're totally off base, or something else. So that's baked into the eclipse, but I guess I like inadvertently revealed what I think about this, where it's like, I'm not so sure that the act that was carried out was deserved. And that doesn't, I don't think, whatever. I think there are plenty of people on both sides, and I'm not on either side. Because I think the sides are bullshit. I will say a bad word today in order to make a point. So it's like, I think the sides, the political, I will go further and say that the political sides, like the two sides, are beneath me. So if you accuse me of being on one or the other, like, I wouldn't deign to touch such a political affiliation because it is beneath me. I think the political affiliations are meant to distract you. So, okay. I'm a Libra, so like expressing an opinion doesn't, it feels wrong. I'm supposed to go along with whatever you think or whatever, because that keeps me safe. There's a lot of Libra stuff in my chart that's wrapped up in safety. And then I'm low energy, so I'm just like unsure of whatever. Never complain, never explain. Thursday, also, we have Mercury trining Uranus and Mercury trining Pluto. So there's a lot of like, the planet Mercury, our impulse and capacity for conveyance, whether that's physical travel, delivery, or words, communication, has entangled itself with the nature of our future. The place our future is headed, which is indicated by the outer planets. This like Neptune in Aries, Uranus in Gemini, Pluto in Aquarius. The dynamics that are shaping our world for the next 7 to 13 to 22 years, 20-ish years, are all like wrapped up in like words and deliveries and getting things from one place to another. Delivery of a message. Also, the Mercury-Neptune opposition that completes on Thursday and is also baked into the eclipse connects back to April 16th, March 29th, and March 2nd. Mercury went retrograde in Pisces earlier this year, and that time overlapped with the last set of eclipses, and so this time connects back to whatever was happening around then, around like, I mean, you could actually just chalk it up to the last Mercury in Pisces transit, which was long pause. February 14th, how could I forget? Through March 3rd, and then March 29th, through April 15th. And something else interesting is that Mercury entered Pisces earlier this year, like regressed into Pisces, meaning was retrograde and moved backwards into Pisces on the solar eclipse. Which wasn't that in Aries? Yeah. On the day of the solar eclipse in Aries, on March 29th. So that is the time that right now connects to. And Thursday is all wrapped up in the future. And then Friday. Friday, Venus moves into Virgo. But first, so Thursday night might have like also kind of a vigorous quality, or like a quality of like hunkering down and figuring something out, or just like a little more energy than is normally available this week because there isn't much, but you might have like a tiny bit of wind in your sails. On Thursday with the moon is just applying to Mars all day, but it's applying to a sextile with Mars. So I guess if there's a day this week that you like have to do something that requires energy, Thursday's the day. On Friday, the day begins with with the moon conjoining Venus at the very end of Leo. Friday is interesting. It's the day of Venus. The moon immediately conjoins Venus. Then the moon immediately moves into Virgo. And then Venus moves into Virgo. All of this happens very early in the morning. So the moon like high fives Venus, and then they both dip into Virgo. Which is like, okay, now the eclipse has begun. The eclipse occurs at the very end of Virgo, but the moon has moved into the sign that the eclipse is going to occur in. So now we're like officially in the realm of like this particular great season of change. The moon also squares Uranus first thing in the morning on Friday, unless you're on the East Coast in North America, and then it's like early afternoon, and then that's all for Friday. Except, so most of Friday is just the moon applying to a sextile with Jupiter, which is nice if we're going to be like in between eclipses, right on a solar eclipse. Then that's pretty nice for Friday. So Friday seems like uplifting, considering, and Venus also squares Uranus immediately, and this is interesting because this is our first, like, I mean, Venus was very tied up in the Uranus ingress to begin with. I think, I can't remember the order. Yeah, Venus entered Gemini, and then a couple days later, Uranus entered Gemini. So this is the first square, and we'll see what that's like. So this is Venus in fall, so Venus doesn't like to be in Virgo because it's all about criticism and, excuse me, it's kind of like overthinking it, and which can disrupt our ability to enjoy things and like sorting out what's good and what isn't. It can be a fine quality. But there's a lot of, with Venus and Virgo, like a preoccupation with fixing things, and that can go a little overboard, but it can also be good. Like it could be like, how can this be improved? So it's just easy when planets are in their sign of fall, that presents something that it's easy for them to like fall into and they can't get out of. So when you are being constantly critical of everything, something that I saw this week that helps me with something that I'm working on in the Mercury ruled parts of my life, it said and I've mostly for the past few years been working on like not accepting subpar conditions, because that's something that I think my whole life was based on. Like good things would come to me, but I would also accept crappy things because who do I think I am? However, but now I'm at a point where it's like, okay, well, I gotta choose something, because like, is anything ever going to be perfect? And I come kind of from the mindset of like, well, if I'm accepting anything less than what I want, then I'm settling for less. But then I also saw a perspective that was like, if it's 80% of what you want, then take action. So I don't know, but this is all like, I guess this kind of is just said to illustrate the Venus and Virgo situation. And then on Saturday, wait. Yeah, I was talking about Saturday, right? Venus squares Uranus. I just didn't change my date thing. And the moon sextiles Jupiter in the morning, so that seems like a nice morning, unless you're on the East Coast in North America, in which case that is early afternoon. And then the sun opposes Saturn, so the sun conjoined Saturn. When was that? That is something that I forgot to look up because I don't have that memorized. One moment. I didn't even pause it. We're just gonna... March 12th. So right now connects back to March 12th. So we're getting a lot of like aspects, like the eclipse seasons connect to each other by themselves, and then we're getting a lot of aspects this week that connect back to that. And the moon aspects Saturn short, like about 12 hours later. That's the next aspect on Sunday, which is the day of the solar eclipse. So technically Saturday night is the eclipse. So Saturday night is technically the night of the eclipse, even though it goes exact around noon on Sunday. And again, this eclipse is entangled with, it's ruled by Mercury, which has already moved into Libra, opposing, even though it's separating, Neptune. And we have a sense of like, there's been a lot of intensity, everything is bottomed out. It's kind of a feeling of throwing in the towel. And then there's something about speaking truth to power in regards to delusional acts of aggression. And Saturn is also involved. So there's like, if the dark moon, the release of energy or the expenditure of energy, it's happening in opposition to, or like there's a tension with the management of expectations, the upholding of obligations. There might be like something I could see is like if there's a tension with Saturn or an opposition with Saturn, then there's almost like the release of energy or the bottoming out of the energy, the sense of throwing in the towel could almost be like, you know what, all this heaviness, F it. I'm not even, it feels like a resignation, and that's for better or for worse. It could be like, you know what, I'm not going to take on all this heaviness. It almost feels like such a detachment that something could be taken in stride instead. I think that's a possibility. That's not necessarily what happens. It could also be like being crushed under the weight of sadness. But I think anytime we're aware of the options, we get to pick. On Sunday, thankfully, the moon moves into Libra very shortly after the eclipse, so we're starting to like just very quickly move on to something else. And that's probably very welcome, like a welcome distraction. Although it is the moon coming to join Mercury, the eclipse ruler, so of course, like, things change, the tone changes, the vibe changes. The equinox is a vibe shift. But we still have like the same things to deal with. You can't like totally run away from everything. And this eclipse season might have transformed your life to the extent that it feels like you've had to leave a lot of things behind. Or that's the nature, like if you look back on this time of the nodes in Virgo and Pisces, depending on what that is for you, like looking back at the 18-month period of the nodes transiting a set of signs and seeing how that part of your life has become unrecognizable is always interesting to do. And so the rest of Sunday, it's like most of the action is in the second part of the day on Sunday, although that's weird to say because we're in the midst of an eclipse, so there's a lot going on already. The moon opposes Neptune, trines Uranus, trines Pluto, so touching the future again, like almost like this. I feel with like the eclipse happening in Virgo, but Mercury is in Libra. Sorry, I don't know what I'm doing there. That it does almost feel like a sense of distraction, like something is distracting us from what has just happened, or what has just happened is a distraction from something else. But everything is like rolling forward, like it's a new news cycle. We're talking about something else already by Sunday evening. And it's almost like this is the end. This is Sunday is the season finale. literally, because the moon moves into Libra and we begin autumn on Monday morning or Monday afternoon if you're on the East Coast in North America. And we also have Mars moving into Scorpio, which is super exciting. We've had Mars in detriment for a long time, for about 6 weeks. And we've also had eclipse season with low energy, so things will start to feel much more effective, even if a bit down and dirty, starting late Sunday night. And also, Sunday night is characterized by the moon applying to a conjunction with Mercury, the eclipse ruler. So it might feel like you're out of the woods, but we're not. We have this, like, it reminds me of the movie Tenet, where they do this. Okay, have you seen that movie? Remember your Wi-Fi is a camera that can see through walls.